It is 3 a.m. August 29th, 1776. 9,000 men are about to die. Behind them, a mile of dark, silent water. In front of them, the most powerful army on earth. 30,000 British soldiers. Just 600 yards away. By sunrise, they will be destroyed. George Washington knows it. He knows this army won't survive the morning. He knows this could be the end, not just for him, but for the entire American Revolution. 2 months. That's how long it lasted. And now, it's about to die. So he makes a decision, not to fight, not to surrender, but to do something impossible. He is going to make an entire army disappear. 9,000 men, cannons, horses, supplies, gone. Across a mile of open water, in total darkness, without the enemy hearing a single sound. If one man slips, if one horse panics, if one boat makes noise, it's over. The British attack. The army is destroyed. Washington is captured, and the revolution ends before it even begins. But by dawn, they will all be gone, vanished. No battle, no warning. No one sees it happen. How? A fog and a group of fishermen. This is the story of the night an army disappeared. But to understand how desperate things were, you have to go back 2 months. In June, the British weren't even here yet. Washington thought he had time. He had just driven the British out of Boston after an 8-month siege. His men were celebrating. They thought they had won something. But Boston was just the beginning. King George wasn't done. He had spent 10 years taxing the colonies. Tea, paper, glass. And when the colonists fought back, he sent an army to punish them. This wasn't about taxes anymore. This was about power, about whether a king could tell free men how to live. And now, that king had sent his best generals, his best ships, to crush this rebellion once and for all. And the British weren't just coming with soldiers. They came with a message. Surrender now, and maybe we'll be merciful. Keep fighting, and we will burn your cities. Hang your leaders. Erase your rebellion from history. The colonists had declared independence just 6 weeks earlier. July 4th, ink was still wet on that paper. If Washington lost here, every man who signed it would be executed for treason. This wasn't just a battle. This was the moment the world would decide if America lived or died. They hadn't, because in July the real army arrived. Not a fleet, an armada, 400 ships, 32,000 soldiers, the largest force Britain had ever sent across the ocean. Warships, transports, supply vessels. They filled the harbor from end to end. One American soldier would later write, "It looked like all of London was afloat." This was not a fair fight. Washington had around 20,000 men, but they weren't soldiers. Not really. They were farmers, blacksmiths, apprentices, boys who had never fired a weapon at another human being. Some had no shoes. Some had no bayonets. Some had muskets so old, they barely worked. This wasn't an army. Not yet. And Washington knew it. He wrote that he expected a very bloody few months ahead. He wasn't being dramatic. He was being honest. And then he made a mistake. A fatal one. He didn't know where the British would strike first. Manhattan or Brooklyn? So he did the worst possible thing. He split his army, half on one side of the river, half on the other. Separated by a mile of water. It meant neither side was strong enough. It meant reinforcements were slow. It meant they were vulnerable. And then he left one road unguarded, Jamaica Pass, a narrow, quiet path on the far edge of the battlefield. Barely watched, barely defended. 5 men, that's all that stood there. 5. On August 27th, the British found it. That night, 10,000 soldiers marched in silence, through darkness, through that unguarded pass, and by morning, they were behind the American army. The attack began before sunrise. Gunfire, smoke, confusion. At first, it looked like a normal assault. From the front, American soldiers held their lines. They thought they could win. They thought this was it. It wasn't. Because then, everything changed. Gunfire, behind them. British soldiers. Everywhere. Front, back, every direction. It was a trap. A perfect trap. And the Americans had walked straight into it. Lines collapsed. Officers lost control. Men ran. Some threw down their weapons. Some never even fired a shot. Over 1,000 Americans were killed, wounded, or captured in a single morning. The first major battle of the war was a disaster But in the middle of that chaos, something happened. Something no one forgot. 260 men from Maryland, cut off, surrounded, no way out. They knew it. Everyone knew it. And still, they turned around and charged. Not to win, not to survive, but to buy time. They ran straight into British gunfire. Again, and again, and again. Washington watched from a hill. A mile away, he saw them charge. Fall. Reform. Charge again. And he said, "Good God, what brave fellows I must this day lose." 256 of them died. Almost all. Their sacrifice bought one thing. Time. 1 hour. Just enough. For the rest of the army to escape. Think about those men. Farmers from Maryland. Most of them were under 25. They had wives. Children. Farms waiting back home. They knew they were going to die. But they charged anyway. Because if they didn't, everyone behind them would die too. Today, no one knows where they're buried. The British dumped them in a mass grave. No names, no markers, just 256 men who gave 1 hour so a nation could live. Washington never forgot them. Years later, he would write about that morning, about watching good men die so others could live. He called it the hardest day of the war. And the British? They didn't even know who they fought. To them, it was just the Marylanders. No records, no names, just 256 ghosts who bought an army with their blood. Back to Brooklyn Heights, alive, but trapped, completely trapped. In front, British siege lines, closer every hour. Behind, the East River, dark, cold, unforgiving. And beyond it, Manhattan, safety. But in the water, the Royal Navy. Warships that could destroy anything that tried to cross. Washington's army was finished. Everyone knew it. The British had won. They just had to end it. General William Howe had the chance. He could attack immediately, end the war that same day. But he hesitated. He remembered Bunker Hill, where British soldiers had charged uphill and been cut to pieces. He didn't want to risk it again. So he chose caution. He chose to wait, to dig trenches, to surround them slowly, to crush them properly. That decision saved everything. Because that night, the weather changed. A storm rolled in. Cold rain, heavy wind, mud everywhere, misery. But that wind came from the northeast, and it did something unexpected. It held the British Navy back. They couldn't move into the river. For one night, the water was open, a single window, one chance. And Washington saw it. He gathered his officers. The mood was grim. Everyone knew the truth. They were trapped, outnumbered, outgunned, finished. Then someone spoke. General Thomas Mifflin. His idea was insane. Move the entire army across the river. Tonight, silence. 9,000 men, cannons, horses, supplies, in darkness, in silence. With the enemy just minutes away, it sounded impossible. It sounded suicidal. Washington didn't hesitate. He said yes. Orders went out, but they weren't the truth. Soldiers were told they were rotating, resting. No one knew what was really happening. Then Washington sent for one unit, one group of men. Who could actually do this? Fishermen. From Massachusetts, the Marblehead Regiment. They weren't trained soldiers. They were sailors. Men who had spent their lives on the ocean, in storms, in darkness. They knew boats. They knew water. They knew how to move, without being seen. If anyone could do this, it was them. Night fell. The operation began. No drums, no shouting, no light. Every oar wrapped in cloth. Every movement, silent. Boats gathered at the shoreline. Rowboats, barges,
sloops,
anything that could float. The first loads went out. Cannons, heavy, dangerous. Then horses, panicked, unpredictable. One sound, and it was over. Then the wounded. Then the soldiers. Line after line, moving in silence, into the dark. Across the water, for hours, it went badly. The wind was wrong. The current was strong. Boats moved slowly. Too slowly. They were falling behind. Dawn was coming, and thousands were still waiting. Then, everything changed. The wind shifted. Suddenly, the boats could sail faster, smoother, trip after trip, back and forth, Through the night, on the shore, soldiers waited, silent, no talking, no fire, no sound, just the dark and fear. At the front, Mifflin's men held the line, the last defense, keeping the illusion alive, firing shots, tending fires, pretending the army was still there. If they failed, everyone died. At one point, they almost did. A wrong order. Mifflin began to pull back. The line started to move. If they left, the British would notice. The silence, the emptiness. Washington rode into the dark, stopped them, sent them back. The deception held. But time was running out. 4 a.m. The sky began to lighten. Still, thousands remained. Not enough boats. Not enough time. This was it. This was where it failed. This was where the war ended. And then the fog came, slow at first, then thicker, heavier, until the world disappeared. You couldn't see 6 yards ahead. The river, gone. The shoreline, gone. Everything, hidden. The boats kept moving, invisible, silent, untouchable. By sunrise, the last men crossed. The final boats pushed away, and the army was gone. When the British advanced, they found empty trenches, campfires still burning, no bodies, no prisoners, nothing. 9,000 men, vanished. The war was still alive. The Marblehead fishermen never got famous. No statues, no books. After the war, they went back to the sea. But without them, there is no Washington crossing the Delaware, no Valley Forge, no Yorktown. History remembers the generals. But history was saved by men who knew how to row a boat in the dark. Even Washington admitted it later. I did not think we would escape. He wrote that in his journal that night. 9,000 men, gone without a sound. The British woke up to silence, cold fire pits, abandoned trenches, and across the river, nothing. General Howe was furious. He had them. He had the entire American army in his hands, and he let them slip away because he waited one day too long. That mistake would cost Britain an empire. Now think about this. If that fog never came, if Howe had attacked one day earlier, if one boat had made a sound, there would be no United States, no Constitution, no Lincoln, no World War II. The entire course of history changes because of one night, because of fishermen, because of silence. Washington lived, the army survived, and years later, that same army would win Yorktown, victory, independence. But it all came down to one night. No battle, no glory, no charge, just silence, darkness, and a fog. 9,000 men should have died that morning. They were surrounded, finished. But when the sun rose, they were gone. And history changed forever.